Okay, as we start, make sure that you have the notes that I have given out in front of you. Otherwise, the whole video won't make any sense. Okay, so basically, let's start off with the first one. The first picture shows you a monitor, which is your computer screen. And the important part that you need to know about this is if you look closely, you will see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 little smaller screens within the bigger screen. And each one of those screens has its own dimensions. So the dimension of a screen is measured in its height versus its width. Okay? So that is the dimensions that's being displayed there. We also talk about the resolution of a monitor, which basically refers to your quality of your image. Okay, very important then. You'll see there's a little 4K standing over there in the left corner of your screen. That K represents the amount of basically saying 4 times more than that which is represented there, that resolution there. So basically, it's giving you an indication that whatever is written there in a resolution value is 4 times better. So your image quality, when you have that 4K, will be so much better when you have that given to you as a specification. So just take note of that. Okay, I'm moving on to the next page. Okay, the next page you will see a little round. Sorry, that just skips there. Let's just go back to page 2. You'll see a little round cloud, and then you'll see another little screen over there at the bottom with little icons. By the way, those icons are called GUI, GUI. That's the graphical user interface that I'm referring to. And that little cloud is basically there to show you that I am talking about online storage. Okay, I'll come back to referring to the cloud now. Those names that you see there in front of you, they being displayed as little icons that I said just now, the GUI, is type of online storages that you get. Okay, the one that I use most is your Google Drive. So your Google Drive is part of your Gmail, or basically actually part of your Google Chrome extension. And it's a very nice platform to be used. Let's say you've got documents. Let's take myself as an example. I've got some platforms that I need to use. Let's say I've got CAT and I've got Maths Lit and I've got Natural Sciences, and I've got 3 departments with different question papers, different memos, etc. So in place of using a USB flash drive, I will use the online storage facilities like one of these to create a storage for myself, which is very nice because it's almost like saving it in a cloud somewhere. So wherever I go, doesn't matter if I have my flash drive with me or not, if it's saved in one of these online storages, I will be able to access it anywhere if I have the relevant device. So just take note of those advantages as well. Okay, moving on to 3. If you look at the word hybrid these days are more familiar than a couple of years ago. You look at Tesla and the fact that they have created um, a, a car that can drive electrically. And some cars drive half electrically, half still with the diesel. And that's basically referring to hybrid. If you want to be very, very basic, we can also say that the Head and Shoulders shampoo conditioner 2-in-1 is also a hybrid hair treatment because it's got conditioner in it and it's got shampoo in it, just for a basic example. When you look at hybrid laptops, you will see, as an example, I've given you a little picture there, and you will see there's a screen and there's your keyboard, which can be flipped over. So, which is very nice about this hybrid, it's basically a 2-in-1. So, it can be operated as a tablet, for instance, as well as a laptop. And so, the four basic common advantages of a hybrid is basically its portability. In other words, it can easily be moved from one space to another without a lot of hassle with cables and big system units and monitors to be carried around. It's going to be cost efficient because you don't have to buy separately now a mouse, because you'll have your trackpad there, your keyboard and your monitor is all in one. Your screen is part of the package, so it's cost efficient. Then this is debatable if it's sleek and attractive. Oh, I see there's a spelling mistake. Just rectify that on your it says typo from my end. So it's sleek and attractive. Like I say, that's debatable. Maybe this is not nice for you, but for the market, we're going to accept the fact that it's sleek and attractive, and then it meets your leisure and your business needs. In other words, tonight you want to show somebody your wedding photos or your matric farewell photos, and then the next day you want to type maybe your allo task, so you got your business and your leisure all in one. Okay, moving on to the next one, which is your multifunctional printer. Now, this is a big example of a multifunctional printer. It's more, I think I would name it a copy machine, but it can also print. It can also scan. It can also maybe send a scan to an email, and etc. So this is a multifunctional printer, as it can do all of those functions in one. The reason I have that there and the watch over there is I want you to realize that the speed of a printer is it's measured in ppm. In other words, it's measured in pages per minute. So if this printer is has a ppm of 40, it means it can print 40 pages per minute. That's why that little watch is there. I want you to realize the difference between printing speed, which I've just explained now, and printing quality. Printing quality refers to the DPI. In other words, the dots per inch. The image quality will be judged by the DPI of that specific image. So don't confuse your image quality, which is your printer quality, with your printer speed. It's two different properties of your printer. Okay, then the network technologies. Now there's a nice little diagram drawn for you. We're quickly going to just do some revision. You've got your server, which is basically your main provider of your network, of any network. This is quite a good example of a HAN, which is your home area network. You've got your tablet there, your laptop, your smartphones, your router, your modem, and then which is connected to your World Wide Web. So just a couple of technical things. When there is cables, normally those cables, the most commonly used cable in a network would be a UTP, unshielded twisted pair. That is what UTP stands for. And then you'll obviously have no cable sometimes, and then it will be wireless, and those devices will be still connected with one another in the network via a Bluetooth or a wireless connection like Bluetooth. Okay, very important then also just to um, to see that we have the modem over there and the router on my left side there. The router will be like your multi-plug. So you will be able to plug in the ADSA cable and all the other cables necessary, almost like a centralized point of plugging. And your modem will then be your provision of your internet. So practically, you you don't, or let's rather say technically, you don't need your router for internet. You only need your modem for internet. But practically, you kind of need that router, especially if you've got a lot of devices that needs to be connected to the internet then. Okay, so we're moving on to the next slide, which basically explain the basic component of the network. So if you just have a look at the bottom picture here, you will see there's two computers, computer A and computer B, which is then connected normally then with the cable that we've just said, the UTP. It will be connected to the switch, and then the network traffic will be controlled, and you'll have your router, you'll have your firewall in between your internet and your router. So let's discuss the components that we have in front of us. If we can start off by looking at your computer A and B. Okay, you will see there's a little abbreviation called a NIC, which refers to the network interface controller. Now, I call it Uncle Nick because we all have an Uncle Nick in our family, which is the soul of our parties. We need an Uncle Nick to allow communication to happen at the parties. So please don't refer to Uncle Nick when you do have the network in front of you. It's only Nick. It's just to explain to you that this little wimpy is needed to make communication between the computer and your systems through the local area network. And then that NIC, like I said, is the abbreviation for Network Interface Controller, and its function is then the communication. If we move on to the next little component there, you will see it fits well with that. It's the same one. So the definition there of the switch would be your device in the network that connects other devices together. So you will know that I always refer to that back one that looks like the Christmas lights is going on and off, and all the cables connect via those ports to one central point. Okay, then you've got your router. We've already spoken about the router in the previous slide. And then you will see there's a little cloud with a lock, and there's a background watermark over there as well. Referring to that is then the firewall of the network, which is basically the network police. Okay, so it's going to control the traffic. So it's going to decide whether it's going to allow or block traffic based on a certain defined set of security rules. So you need to know that a firewall will lie within between your router and your internet, and it will have the basic functions of, and those are the two functions that I have drawn with two pictures. That little jack represents a filtering, a water filtering system, and the other one is a security badge. Okay, you must use your imagination here with my slides. But this will help you to remember that the two main roles of a firewall is to filter and to secure. In other words, to play an important role in the security of your network. Okay, I'm moving on to the next slide. Now, what is the advantages of a network? We've looked at a network, we've looked at what is a network consisted of. The basic advantage of a network, and there is more, but for the sake of the test, we're going to just focus on sharing. Okay, sharing is scaring. And the basic three things we're sharing in a network is hardware, software, and files. An example of a hardware would be a very expensive printer that let's say we have it in our class and all the computers in our class are connected to this one printer. It means I don't have to buy a printer for each little workstation. Everybody can print to the same device, the same hardware. Then we will also share software, or we will be able to share software like programs or applications or your Microsoft package. And then also files, if you can just have a look at your common server. If I drop a file or when you write an examination, I don't have to go along and upload the files needed for your examination on each computer. I'm going to drop it or upload it on the common server, and you'll be able to extract it once off. So those are the basic sharing advantages of a network. Then obviously with advantages comes disadvantages. So if we can have a look at the disadvantages, these are 5 pictures. So you need to listen carefully, otherwise you're not going to have any sense of what this means. The first one is a couple of dollar notes, which means a network is a costly thing. It is expensive to set up, but it's worth it, but it might be a disadvantage. It might be something that somebody will think about twice when they do set up a network. So it's something you have to take into account. It's also time consuming. It's not just a once off thing. It's there and it's happening. You need some time to set up that network, and it needs consistent maintenance that also goes together with that little man climbing into the server. The third disadvantage is not everybody might be able to understand a network. So you need somebody, and that's why I use this professor looking icon to be able to administrate your network. Not everybody has the knowledge or the skills to administrate a network. So that might be a disadvantage because it might be a scarce skills. And if you don't have that person, you won't be able to work with your network. Then that little picture there represents a broken cable. That might also be a disadvantage of a network because, like you can think of in the class, some networks are wireless. So that then won't be a disadvantage. But there is some places that you can't get out of using a cable. And wearing and tearing happens. And so you will get some broken cables, and it will be a disadvantage if you need to locate it and maybe then fix it. And then the last one is the maintenance. There must be constant maintenance on the network to see that it's working properly and that everything is in place and order. Okay, if we can move along to the next topic, we're going to talk about viruses. It's not something that we have spoken about a lot in class. You need to be able to define a virus. A virus is a computer program that is written to cause intentional harm to a computer system. Okay, so it's been written by some awful person that wants to harm other people's computer systems. Okay, maybe not always the case being awful. Sorry if I offend somebody, but it's not a very nice thing. Obviously, a virus is not associated with positivity. Those are the basic 4 things that we're going to work with in grade 11: the adware, the spyware, Trojan, and worms. So adware is basically very irritating, much more than it's malicious. It's those ad blocks that keeps on coming up when let's say you're reading an article and it comes up and it's actually very, it's taking some of your time because now you have to cancel it, or they want you to open it up before you can go further. Spyware is what the name basically says. it is spying on what you are doing. So it might come in with an attachment, and that's why sometimes the Trojans come in as a spyware, okay? Because it looks like something unharmful, like attachment of an email, and then when you open it up, it basically then hacks your applications or your software so that it can spy on what you are doing and your personal of information. And that's why the Trojan is sometimes the virus used as a spyware, because if you look at the Greek mythology, you can go read up on it, but it's basically Troy, the city that was then entered in by the Trojan horse, and inside the Trojan horse there were soldiers. So they wanted to take over Troy, and then they built this big horse. You can go Google it for you to make a little bit more sense of it. And then once they've entered Troy, all these soldiers came out. So that basically explains quite well what a Trojan virus is, because it's representing itself as something which is not. And then once it's opened, it becomes harmful and malicious. And then worms are basically also a type of virus. The main thing you need to understand about worms is that it's replicating itself, and it does not need a host in order to do so. So it sounds a lot medical when you think about it like that. A host can be anything like the flash drive or your software. So just take note of these names, and especially for a short question. Then we're moving along. You will see there's a little bug that's been inspected by a magnifying glass. And so we're going to talk about software bugs now. Software bugs are different from a virus in the sense that it's not originally written to cause intentional harm. However, unfortunately, sometimes it does cause harm, but it's because of human failure and error rather than somebody sitting and thinking out something to write in a software form. So basically, the most common reason for a software bug is that humans make mistake when they do their software design and coding. So this is basically more part of when you become a programmer, but you have to just take note of the fact that you will work in a binary language. In other words, we have a language that has an alphabet of A to Z, and then when you're a programmer, you will have a alphabet that consists of ones and zeros. Now, I am walking on very dangerous grounds as I'm not really very familiar with all of these things. Don't ask me about coding in the sense of what you need to push to code something, but I do understand that that is the alphabet, and this is what you need to know in order to understand how software bug works. So basically, if you just look at those little sentences there on the right hand side, it will say that it's a flaw in a program that produces undesired or incorrect results. So it's an error that prevents the application from functioning as it should. So to give you an example, there's quite a bit of examples in history of major errors that happen. There's one that they have built a spaceship, and then just as it launches, within the first 5 minutes, the program that was supposed to let the rocket launch had a little software bug in it. In other words, let's say it had to be written, and I'm really explaining it very basically at this point. Let's say for in order for the rocket to launch correctly, the code had been 11011, and now somewhere along the line there was an error, so one of those zeros became another one. Okay, so then obviously you can imagine it has created havoc. Another example that also existed, and unfortunately it did result in some deaths, it was the software bug that happened when people that had cancer, they injected them with chemotherapy, but they used these programs to basically do it for them. It's almost like narcotics, so you really need to be able to know what you're doing, although the machine will do it for you. And there was also a mistake in the coding. So what happened is the patients got more or less than they were supposed to have, and it was, unfortunately, it was fatal. Okay, so a software bug can be fixed, and we call these fixes a little patch, almost like you would patch your wheel. We call those rubber things that you put over your bike wheel a patch. So a software patch is basically a piece of code that are tailored in such a way to fix a bug. In other words, you're just going to add that new feature into the application. It takes a lot of time to write a program or an application, so you're not going to rewrite the whole thing once you've realized that there's a bug, a software bug within your program. You're just going to rewrite that little part. You're going to recode that, and you're going to make use of a software patch to do that for you. Okay, I'm moving along to the next one. We're talking about the router, and we just touched some base with it when we spoke about the difference between a router and a modem. And we also looked at the router's part that it plays in a network. So this is a very nice picture to show you those multiple ports that it has, that it can be plugged into. And so it's very important that you also have a look at this. If you look at that little signature there that you know as a wireless signature or a little icon, you will see it says 150 megabytes per second. That is what the abbreviation Mbps stands for. So it's very important that you understand. I'm going to jump over to this side just to make you aware of this. People do actually mistake the internet speed a lot with the volume of the information that can be sent over a connection in a measured amount of time. Now, the volume of the information that can be sent over a connection in a measured amount of time is calculated in that megabits per second. So it's important that bandwidth is not, it should not be mistaken with internet speed. Okay, it's two different things. But we're not going to get too technical now. I just want you to realize that the most basic factors that can slow down your connection. Let's say you're busy with your WhatsApp call, you're calling your friend or your boyfriend, and you can't see it's her or his face clearly anymore. The quality is almost a bit blurry. You need to know theoretically why that will cause the slow connection, the poor quality connection. So the first thing of us, well, basically the quality of the connection will have got to do with the bandwidth. In other words, the maximum amount of data transmitted over an internet connection in that given time. That will cause your quality to be poor, but your connection speed will be affected by your data transfer technology. In other words, let's say I am busy and transferring files via one device to another through Bluetooth, and let's say the distance between the devices will increase all of a sudden. Then that data transfer will come to a halt, or it will decrease. Your network centralizer, basically, where is your internet coming from? Okay, if this is your router and your modem is giving you and providing you with the internet, and you are sitting somewhere in between your lounge, and let's say your router or your modem is now not, or it's two different things, your modem, modem is now in your bedroom, it might affect your signal. That's why some of these IT guys that install the internet will then use reflections, almost as a basically scientifically based on reflection like a mirror. But I'm not going to go into that now. I'm just talking about the fact that your network centralizer can also affect your connection, where it's located. And then obviously the last one there is other devices and users. You would see some days, some time slots will be more, there will be more people on the network than others. Okay, that's why when you do your downloads, sometimes the networks call it the night owl, because normally people will be asleep during the night owl time slots, and that's why you'll get you an extra gigs then, because they don't have a lot to lose either, because there's not so many people on there. Okay, so just take note of the slow connection and then also versus the quality. Our next picture shows you a little bit of what we call biometrics, and this is cyber security, or basically security being used uh, with biometrics. In other words, your identification, like your face recognition, the pupil of your eye, there's the face recognition, your voice, your thumb, your fingerprint, etc. So just take note of biometrics. We have done a lot of examples of biometrics. This is a very um, good way to authenticate somebody. Let's say you are the supervisor or the manager of a bank, and you're the only one that can enter certain areas. So they would need your thumbprint to be able to enter in there. If they don't have that, they won't be able to enter. So it's a very secure way to create a cyber security. Okay, so just take note of that. And then we're just going to quickly talk about fact and fake. So fact and fake, basically you just need to take into account when you're on the internet, some of the news that you are reading might be fake news, and you need to know at least two things you can do to check whether this news article is fake either or not. So read through this, check to see if the source is respected. Is it well known? Is it BBC? Is it something that you know, or is it something that just looks like it has been edited in somebody's backyard in the garage? Check to see when the article was published. Is it a 1917 one, or has it been recently published? Check to see if the article is factual. In other words, is it somebody's opinions, because then it's going to be biased, or is it actual facts that they are giving out? Are they using other website? In other words, is the accuracy when they refer normally in your sources, and we've done this in the past, they are referring it to other sources. That's also a credibility that you can check. And then look at the depth of the professionalism of the article. In other words, how does it look? Is it in a proper way referenced? Is it properly compiled? How's the language, etc.? Okay, so go read and learn two of those things at least. And then you must just take note of copyright, which also takes goes together with fact and fake news. What type of law provides protection against the copying of intellectual property? That would obviously be your copyright. Okay, and then this is a new word for some of you. The configurance of something refers to the trend whereby separate features or functions or technologies that were needed, um, different devices in the past are now combined. So I made a little picture for you. This is the S21 lavender phone. And so you will see that all of those things that is surrounded there can be found within this one phone. You don't need a camera and a game console and your Netflix and your internet separately anymore. You have everything in one device, and that is what that word refers to. Okay, I'm moving on. Net etiquette basically is a set of guidelines that is used when compiling an email. Now, some of you must have also, I think I must put this up in my class to have some cat etiquette as well, or class etiquette. But anyway, let's quickly look at the questions that you might get. If you an email program or set up to reject or block programs or executable files. That stands for the file extension is executable. In other words, basically, potentially, it may contain malicious programs and therefore it will be deleted. Okay? And then you must know what AUP stands for. It's Accepted Usage Policy. And so this would basically be any issues regarding respect for privacy, confidentiality, any matters regarding etiquette, do not abuse resources such as bandwidth. This is what forms part of a AUP policy normally. Okay, and then the question asked here suggests a way you can trick the email program into accepting this file as an attachment. Okay, the file, let's say something .exe. You can change the file extension. In other words, change the file extension exe to a non-executable extension. So save it as a compatible version. Put the .exe file in an archive and use encryption, like zip the file. You can also paste the items in another file, or you can customize the email server. So that's all basic things you can do to trick it and to still be able to send that email. Okay, then we're going to quickly just look at solution development. So let's say a user wants different page numberings to appear in different sections in a Word document. So all the necessary section breaks has been added, but the same numbering still appears in both sections of the document. So which two steps does he still need to take to have different page numbering in the second section? Go read this very slowly by yourself and maybe try it on your own when you're in the CAT class again. So what does he need to do? He need to break the link to the previous section, okay, so that the computer can see it as one. And he also need to add the required numbering in the second section again. Okay, then if I ask you to name a word processing feature that must be used before an automatic table of figures can be inserted in a document, that would be a caption. You need to first capture all your little figures that needs to form part of your table of figures. Why would you now these two questions, why select the create and purpose of that star specification refers to this object? Let's say I am looking for a file, okay? I want to create a file, something from a file. So they're asking you, why are you selecting create from a file rather than just saying create new? Because you want to use an existing file, something that's already been created. You want to use that. That's why you choosing that. The purpose of those little two stars, the asterisks with that little thing says basically everything that has that hyphenation will be searched for. So to cause all files, irrespective of the name, to be listed, and no restriction on which file. So there's no only JPEGs or only PDFs. That is your restriction. There is no restriction. Okay, moving on to the last one. Now, if you look at this, my list has a header row or a no header row. Okay, So they're asking you here, why would it usually be good or a good idea to rather use the header row option instead? In other words, marking that one. The reason for this is if the header row, which is usually column headings, were to be selected for sorting, the sorting process involves the column headings. Okay, so now if you've chosen no header row, it would be not that easy for the user to indicate a meaningful name for the contents of that specific column. Let's say column 1, column 2, etc. Okay. Now the second part is asking you explain why the options are offered with radio buttons rather than boxes. Now you need to know in grade 11 that those little boxes there is called radio buttons. A check button would be something like your sex. Is it male or female or both maybe? Okay? Or maybe, okay, maybe that wasn't such a good example of a checkbox. What is your favorite food? Maybe you've got more than one favorite food, a pizza and a hamburger. So it will be given to you in a checkbox and you will select more than one. So a radio box does not give you the possibility to choose more than one. It should either be one or the other, which makes sense because though you don't want it to be able to choose both because it will be irrelevant, it will not work then. So when you have a radio box, you have the option to only choose one. And then if you want more than one option, you will be able to, like I said, click pizza and hamburger and salad. Then it will be implied that it was a checkbox and no longer a radio box.